Let's now shift our attention to the other big story that we are tracking on WION this hour. Now, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to embark on the second leg of his visit for Kyiv. He'll be kicking off the most closely watched leg of his two-nation tour. In just about half an hour from now, the Indian Prime Minister will be boarding the train Force 1, the luxury Polish train, for a 10-hour-long journey that will take him to Kyiv. An Indian Prime Minister in Ukraine is first in nearly about 3 decades, and there's a lot that's being looked at very closely for the emerging signals, especially coming as it does in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, earlier in the day in Warsaw, post his meeting with his Polish counterpart, Donald Tusk, the Indian Prime Minister had reiterated his no time for war message, affirming India's commitment to regional peace and emphasizing the importance of dialogue and diplomacy. He stressed on it during his meeting with the Indian diaspora as well.
बुद्ध की बात आती है तो जो युद्ध नहीं शांति पर विश्वास करती है। और इसलिए भारत इस रीजन में भी स्थायी शांति का एक बड़ा पैरोकार है।
Now, Modi's Ukraine visit will come nearly a month after he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The two traditionally close allies had met on a day when Russian missiles had pounded Ukraine, killing scores of people. Now, Zelensky described the meeting as a huge disappointment and also a devastating blow to peace efforts. He had chided Modi for the visit. It was just that the Indian Prime Minister addressed when he spoke of being close to all sides and seeking peace above all else.
दशकों तक भारत की नीति थी कि सारे देशों से समान दूरी बनाए रखो। आज के भारत की नीति है सारे देशों से समान रूप से नजदीकी बनाओ।
And also to give us more perspective in terms of course, what is expected to happen as a part of this visit, my colleague Siddhant Sibil is at this moment joining us live on our broadcast. Siddhant, this is an extremely important bit of a visit by the Indian Prime Minister. He is expected to depart for Kyiv in just a bit from now. Tell us what's, of course, riding as part of this visit where the Indian Prime Minister will be meeting with the Ukrainian President.
Well, Mohammed, it will be a significant day tomorrow when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be here in Kyiv. The first time an Indian Prime Minister is in Ukraine since the country's independence. And of course, war, of course, will be shadowing his visit. Big focus, of course, will be on key announcements or the comments made by the Indian Prime Minister. The Indian Prime Minister 2 months ago was in Moscow, where he emphasized in dialogue and diplomacy, and he basically said that the only way forward in terms of resolving this war is through dialogue. And he is going to say the similar message here, but in Ukraine we will be sending another big focus area in terms of support, that is sending the humanitarian assistance. India has already sent tons of humanitarian support, and also in terms of reconstruction efforts here in Ukraine, India has been playing and expected to play an important role. So essentially a significant visit of the Indian Prime Minister, where he will be not only engaging with the Ukrainian president, but whatever he says here will be closely watched in the global capitals, including, of course, in Moscow.
Absolutely. And also what is going to be important is not just the message, but also the optics. Because when the Indian Prime Minister was in Moscow, the Ukrainian president, did not take it well. that the Indian Prime Minister had met with the Russian President back then, suggesting that perhaps India had sided with Russia. But the Indian Prime Minister has gone with the message that India stands for peace and dialogue and diplomacy is the way to solve every conflict around the world.
Well, yes, of course, optics do matter in these visits. Visits like the visits that happened 2 months ago, whether it is in Italy, where the Indian Prime Minister and the Ukrainian President Zelensky had a meeting on the sidelines of the G7 summit, whether it is in Moscow and whether it is here in Kyiv. In fact, this will be the third meeting between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Ukrainian President since the war started. Both the leaders first met on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Japan, and followed by the G7 summit in Italy, and then of course now in Kyiv, where of course the focus, as we have talked about, will be on reconstruction and also on the humanitarian assistance by New Delhi.
Absolutely, indeed, Siddhant. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting us all those updates there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.